and with the backing of Jim Norris of Chicago, Joe named the two top contenders, Ezzard Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott, to fight for his vacated title, with Lewis himself as the new promoter. Divorced now from Marva Trotter, Joe hardly lacked for female companions, including the lovely Lena Horne, who became what Time magazine would call his great and good friend. He also kept busy with exhibition bouts, including one against Pat Valentino, before crowds that included his successor, Ezzard Charles. Joe made money, but not fast enough to satisfy the IRS, which was charging him $50,000 a year in interest alone, while the principal kept mounting up and up.
Joe, everyone in Chicago, everyone in the United States, and I guess everyone in the world wants to know, are you going to make a comeback? And did this fight tonight have any influence on your future plans? Or what are your future plans?
Well, Harry, I'm going to continue boxing them 10-round no decision fights right now. And after the first of the year, then I would really know what I'm going to do.
He had no choice but to come out of retirement at age 35 and challenge Ezzard Charles for the championship.
Ezzard Charles was a great fighter, very much underrated, never given the real credit due him. He was one of those black fighters who could do everything and anything in the ring.
Seconds out now as Ezzard Charles has his nose patched up by Ray Arcel. Joe Louis.
What the public didn't know was that in his heart, Joe felt he wasn't ready for Charles. This would be his first real fight after a 2-year layoff, and he would have liked to wait at least until the end of the year to work himself into better shape. But money talked louder than Joe's professional qualms. An outdoor fight in Yankee Stadium had to be held no later than early fall, and Jim Norris had already counted the house. Ready or not, Joe was in there with a younger, faster, and at this stage, more highly skilled Ezzard Charles, eager to prove to the world that he was a true champion and not the imposter some detractors claimed.
Left eye. Now Charles with a right hand under the heart.
For this fight, for the first time in his life, Joe had waited in his dressing room to be summoned to the ring, wishing he didn't have to go down. It was all I could do, he admitted later, not to ask my trainer to call it off.
Charles waits for him out in the center of the ring here at Yankee Stadium, and we can see that there's not too much power in the knees of Ezzard Charles now, but he's gained with 45 seconds, and a great era may be definitely coming to an end as Charles stays away, shoots his left hand in for the forehead, tries to work on the midsection, but Joe Louis ties him up there with 30 seconds left.
Why? Why does this guy fight? Does he need the money that bad at this stage of his life? And that is the sad thing, to see a fellow who reaches his peak and then starts to go downhill, to try to keep on performing against younger, experienced fighters. And that's when you get hurt, because if you're the older fighter, your coordination is gone, your reflexes aren't as sharp, your ability to see the things that you ordinarily would be able to see and overcome. You can't fool Father Time and Mother Nature. It's absolutely impossible. And you can only go so far and then know when to quit.
Joe tried the beer business and a car dealership, but there was only one business he really knew, and so he stayed with it, figuring he could still lick run-of-the-mill heavyweights like Lee Savold and Cesar Brion, and maybe even fight his way back to a rematch with Ezzard Charles. But that dream ended when Jersey Joe Walcott knocked out Charles. And now the only money fight left for the 37-year-old Joe Louis was with the young, undefeated, hungry white hope, Rocky Marciano, whose style and punching power were being compared, as Joe's once had been, to Jack Dempsey's.
Hello, boxing fans, wherever you may be, but especially to those in New England. I'm in good shape for this fight, and I
hope I come through all right.
Hold it there, Rocky. Don't go away.
Straight left hand on the jaw of Marciano. Lewis takes an overhand right to the chin. A solid punch and then a right to the body by Marciano. Lewis backing away with that wide stance again, feinting the left hand. Marciano going into a crash. And Lewis is down for left hook. Lewis down for left hook. 3, 4. And Lewis takes it out on 1, 7, 8. Lewis is up with a count of 8. He was down. A clean left hook on the jaw. Here's Marciano missing it right over the head. The left hand, another right to the jaw. Left hook to the mouth by Marciano. Lewis is holding on. He's in real trouble. Marciano has Lewis holding him. Marciano misses the left. A shot right to the jaw. Left hook to the mouth by Marciano. And Marciano is now with a left and a right to the jaw. He nails Lewis with a right to the head. A left to the body. A left hook. Staggers Lewis. Lewis is down again. Lewis is down outside the roof. It's all over. Ruby Goldstein is stopping the fight. Rocky Marciano is the winner by a knockout. Joe Lewis is done with fighting. Out of the rope, on his back. The doctor is over there. He was knocked down first with a left hook for an 8 count. Then Marciano got him against the rope. Lewis fought back desperately, shook Marciano, then got nailed with 2 left hooks, had a right hand, went out of the rope, staggered along him first, fell through him, and his ring career, one of the most sensational in boxing history, is over.
There was another war now, over in Korea, and again the armed services thought that Joe's giving exhibitions in the Far East would help morale. Not that our government was doing much to help Joe's morale. It was nice to have a hero's welcome from our recent enemies, but inside his head an adding machine went clicking. $1 million in debt to the IRS, $100,000 a year in interest alone. He could still draw crowds to stadiums, even for matches with Army novices. But deep down, Joe had to be thinking, what do I do with the rest of my life? As if to symbolize the passing of the good old days, in 1953, Uncle Mike Jacobs was gone at the age of 72. Mike was no social reformer, but Joe would be forever grateful to him for opening the door to black champions 20 years earlier. Trying show business now, Joe did a turn with the timeless Nicholas Brothers and singing star Dolores Parker. Trouble was hitting Joe in combinations. His beloved mama died, leaving him $600 that the IRS grabbed. Nor was his attorney able to stop them from moving in on his children's trust funds. A failed remarriage to Marva didn't help either. Life looked a little brighter when he met and married Rose Morgan, a successful beautician with 65 people on her payroll. With the visit of his children to join hers, things seemed happy on the surface. But Joe was an habitual night owl and Rose an early rising executive. So after only 18 months, they parted, and Joe resumed his bachelor ways. Joe Louis was a proud man, but he was also a desperate one. And when he got an offer to go on the wrestling circuit, he joined the carnival of the Muscle Boys in what might be called Requiem for a Heavyweight. For the most successful black athlete of all time, this was the bottom of the barrel. There were choreographed wins over professional wrestlers like Cowboy Rocky Lee, with Joe simulating heavy punches and following instructions to exult over his victories in a way he had always disdained in his years of dignity and glory. Ironically, it was Jersey Joe Walcott, his last serious challenger, who lifted Joe's arm in token of victory. But for even these hollow conquests, Joe paid dearly when the cowboy cracked one of his ribs, which in turn damaged his heart muscles. Small wonder that in these dark times, Joe turned to frequent fixes to make him feel he was once again heavyweight champion of the world.
I don't know. My mind hadn't been made up whether I would go back to wrestling or not. I know I would referee some wrestling matches again, that I'm sure of.
Broken in mind and body, ashamed of his false friends, but moved by some sense of what he'd once been, Joe renewed his acquaintance with a woman who stood for all the values he'd been running away from. The first black woman attorney in California, Martha Malone Jefferson, and the last Mrs. Lewis.
He seemed to have been quite at peace in Los Angeles. But then he'd go on the golf circuits, and he would have various appearances at different places at different times, which it suited me fine.
Spending days on the golf course seemed a healthy pastime, except for Joe's habit of gambling thousands of dollars on a game he never mastered quite as well as boxing.
Joe was a rather free-hearted person. He would give you his last dime. He might not have but $40 in his pocket, but if you came up and told him a hard luck story that you needed $40, Joe would give you the $40 and take a chance on getting him some more money from somewhere else. That's the way he was.
When Joe moved with Martha to their 10-room house in Las Vegas, one room was virtually a museum devoted to his trophies.